Welcome, listeners, to Learning from Friends. As you know, I'm your tour guide, Cade Curtis, on this lovely adventure that I get to call my podcast, and you as well, my listeners. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. It's glad to have you. If you're a returning listener, thank you for continuing to coming back and listening to these lovely episodes. As y'all know, I like to start off my episodes with quote of the day from my mother that sends me these wonderful inspirations of life every day or every other day, whenever she comes across. She has like a filing cabinet drawer full of stuff, so it's always fun to see what she sends me. But today's quote comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. Beautiful words, Mom, on sharing that across with me and our listeners now out there as well. It's fitting because my guest today, Joseph Mullinax, or Joe as I like to call him, is a 10-year special education teacher, wrestling coach, football coach, and we're going to touch a lot on these topics to kind of see what it takes to be a good coach and an educator, because the hours are long and many of the work actually goes unseen. And so let's crack open that door a little bit and kind of see what it's like behind there, my friends. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Cade.
It's a pleasure that you take time out of your day, especially your summer vacation, because we're still wrapping up a lot of our summer vacation time. We're coming down to what do we got, two and a half weeks left before we get our kids?
2.5 weeks left before pre-planning, so
yeah,
there.
It's getting there, and you're already in practices right now with football, getting prepared up.
So we've been going, pretty much we do 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, just probably about 8 to 10, 2 hours. So just quick run, quick lift. And we do get some practice time with helmet only. So we've been going since the beginning of June. And this week's dead week. And so we'll pick it back up Monday. We'll have 2 more weeks and then practice starts.
Man, summer didn't break for you.
No.
Summer didn't break for you. Now, suppose I were to look up, making a Wikipedia page, and I go, hey, who is Joe Mullinax? What would be kind of like a summary that you would want someone to know about you if they found this Wikipedia page?
I'm from Cherokee County. I've lived here my entire life. Outside of the time I spent in college, I started off in Buffton Elementary for a little bit, split to Macedonia for 6th grade, went to Teasley. Always tried to do things throughout school, and even in middle school. I was in middle school band with Miss Mullins for 7th grade. Played the tuba in 8th grade with Mr. Norton and Mr. Carter. I actually was in the district honor band 8th grade with a couple other people, so I was actually decent at that. And then when I went to high school, which is kind of sports took over because I kind of felt like that what was going to help me out. Even coming out of middle school, I kind of knew I wanted to get into teaching and coaching. Cherokee, played football, wrestled, and threw shot put and discus for track a little bit. I didn't do track all 4 years. I only did that about 2 years. Always felt like it was a pretty good time at Cherokee. We were pretty fortunate to go through a pretty good group of football, and then went to the playoffs a couple of years, the Elite Eight, freshman and sophomore year. Got to go to Valdosta freshman year, Camden County sophomore year. We got to play in the Georgia Dome our senior year for the Corky Kell Classics. I always felt like there were some pretty good things that we got to experience in high school. I was fortunate enough to get recruited by some schools for football. Never was the tallest person, certainly had the size, just not the height. Visited around some schools and didn't really know where I wanted to go, but I did know that I just wanted to play football. And I think that's kind of what helped me out in high school is I just knew I didn't want to stop after high school. So visited some schools. Recruiting when we were in high school is completely different than it is now. We were still making DVDs and sending it out.
Getting the letters to come through the mail.
Sending it out to coaches. The only social media we had was MySpace. So, it was completely different.
You forgot about Zanga, man. We had the little blog for Zanga.
Yeah. And so I ended up going to Union College, which is in Barberville, Kentucky. It is in the same conference as Reinhardt right now, but Reinhardt wasn't around then. So ended up going to Union College. That's in the Mid-South Conference Classic. It's an NAIA school. Able to get some scholarship money to play football there. I think the thing that really drew me to Union is playing in high school. I didn't really want to sit on the bench coming out of high school. And so going to a smaller school like that, I felt like it was really my chance to work my way in with a starting rotation. sooner than later. So I went to Union, had a pretty good 4 years there, started 35, 36 games, and
Nice.
appeared in almost 40. I got hurt right at the beginning of my freshman year, so that kind of hurt me a little bit. Missed a couple of games due to that. But it was a great experience and majored in education. I actually majored in physical education, thinking maybe I might be able to get into that. And 10 years later, I still have yet to get in physical education, but that's fine. I've actually really enjoyed being in special ed. Came home, graduated in December, so wasn't able to get a job right off the bat. I actually worked at Coffee AM in Freeholm for
Oh yeah.
about 7 months.
Right next to my parents.
Yeah, so I actually ended up working in a coffee warehouse for about 7 months. I actually learned how to roast it. Learning how to roast over learning how to drive the forklift.
The smells are so beautiful
yeah.
of smelling that.
And so I ended up getting hired at River Ridge High School in 2012. One of our former coaches at Cherokee, Keith Manus, he was actually coaching at River Ridge at the time. Former athletic director at Cherokee, Mike Baker, who was at Cherokee when we were there. He was AD there, and I ended up emailing him, and he got me an interview like the next day with Daryl Herring, who was the principal that started River Ridge High School. And so I went in for my interview, knew I was going to be coaching football. I'd actually interviewed in some other places. I actually interviewed at Cherokee with Miss Murdoch before interviewing with River Ridge. Interviewed at some schools in Cobb County, so I kind of knew at the time going into it I was going to have to do more than just coach football to get your foot in the door. So I got the job as special education general curriculum IRR, which is team teacher.
Yes.
So I team taught my first 3 years, and I accepted the football job. I ended up being the head freshman football coach my first year. Briefly after that, after I went in for my second interview, that I was going to have to coach track as well, shot put and discus. So I did that the first 3 years. And then about June or July, the current wrestling coach at the time, Coach Sims, he left and decided to get out of teaching. And so at that point, you only have so many allotments, and all the allotments were filled. And so at that point, you're trying to piece together and find a coach from the people you've hired. And so myself and Matt Rice, he from Cherokee County as well, went to Woodstock. He was coming over from Woodstock High School, and we got an email from Mr. Herron asking that the school needed a head wrestling coach and an assistant wrestling coach. And of course, at the time, being 22, 23, never taught, haven't coached anything, I offered to be the assistant coach. And then one of the things I found out, Mike Baker, he's a great guy. He said, "Oh, Joe wrestled in high school. He can be the head coach." So I was the head coach.
One more,
So
added on.
Before I even stepped in the first day of pre-planning, I found myself being the head freshman football coach, head wrestling coach, an assistant track coach doing shot put and discus.
On top of teaching.
On top of teaching. And so learning the IEP process, which Cherokee County has one of the most rigorous IEP processes in the entire state.
It's tough. And that's a lot of learning curve right there.
Yeah.
A lot of learning curve.
And so I got into there, and I did track. I did 3 sports for 3 years, and kind of my way of getting out of 3 sports is I offered to go back and get my CDL. Cherokee County actually offers a training program for teachers and coaches if they wish to get their CDL to drive athletic buses or activity buses. And so getting out of the 3rd sport, I went back and got my CDL. I went through the 2-week training program with the county to drive a school bus. And I still have my CDL. I did that really to help out with wrestling, because used to you had to pay for it. Now we have a traveling budget. The longer I've been in education, the better things have gotten. And so really I got my CDL to help out with wrestling so we wouldn't have to pay for transportation. After 3 years of being team taught, I decided to stay at River Ridge, kind of make a career change as far as the 745 to 345. And I went through a training program. I got certified in something called CTI, which is Career Technical Instruction. It's still labeled under the special education umbrella. I worked with the special education students in the career tech classes. And so basically what I did is I provided a consult service based on the service plan and the IEP. I would work with those kids in those classes. It was actually a really good job. Been very fortunate to do that for 7 years. I base my schedule off of the kids. and just go from class to class to class. I'm not in a class for the whole period. I may go to 2 or 3 classes based off the consultation time frame of the service plan, and kind of just what the teachers are doing as well. Like if the foods teacher, she's in the kitchen cooking, I might actually stay in the kitchen that whole period because she would have been in there for an hour with 35 kids.
Yeah, that's
and
a
so
lot.
just kind of helping out with that. Like I said, I've been a head wrestling coach for 10 years, and this year I actually stepped down from wrestling. I have an 8-year-old son named Knox who will be 9 in October. And then I have a 4-month-old daughter, McKinley, who will be 5 months old next week. And I've kind of taken Knox with me when I have him. And he's been going to workouts since he was 2. I mean, summer workouts.
Is he jacked up and got muscles on top of muscles too? He's getting out there deadlifting already himself.
He's actually complete opposite of me. He is very smart, very smart. He goes to Cherokee or Community Christian, and he actually tested and he skipped 2nd grade and went into 3rd grade.
Wow.
So he's going to be a 4th grader this year, but he is a sweet soul, very opposite of me. But he did start taking karate in March, so we do finally get him in something. But yeah, he did want to wrestle for a little bit. One of the things Knox says, and if he doesn't like sports, I guess I would have to say it's probably my fault because he knows football's hot. Like, football's hot.
Oh, yeah.
Like, going outside. Wrestling never really bothered him that much because it's in the wintertime. It's inside. There was a time when he wanted to wrestle, and so I said, okay, well, how about this? I said, let's go to a practice. So I took him to one of our junior program practices, and I said, let's try it.
There you go.
Because I said,
hands on.
You need to finish it if you start it. But I said, this is just a tryout. I said, I'm not going to register you because once I register, you're going to have to finish it.
You start it, you finish it.
And so he was doing really good. He liked it. But I mean, at that point, junior program wrestling, you can start when they have 6U, which is 6 and under. So you can start when you're in kindergarten.
Oh, wow. I didn't
all the way
realize.
up to 14.
Wow.
And so, 5, 6 year olds being 5, 6 years old, I told him, I said, you got to listen to the coach like you would listen to me. And so the coach, he went through, he did really good during the whole practice. And he was listening to the coach go over something. They were just standing there, supposed to be paying attention. And then another kid, just being a 5-year-old, came up, behind him, picked him up when he wasn't expecting it, and slammed him down. And he was like, I'm done. I was like, okay. I said, that's fine. And so I was at a point in my life where, and it's like I told the kids when I gave up wrestling, I said, for 10 years now, I've put in other people's kids before my own. And I made the decision before McKinley was born, and I just knew that I had done that with Knox, and I had missed a lot of time with my son. And so I just felt like I was at a point in my career where I really needed to make the decision to put my family first before other people's kids. So I've stepped out of wrestling. I'm still doing football. I'm still at River Ridge High School. I'm actually going into a different role at River Ridge. I'm moving into the role as the EBD teacher, which is the emotional behavior disorder, because I've always felt like what was weird is like not really having a lot of experience with special education going into teaching. I've actually grown more accustomed to it and really connecting with those kids more so than maybe regular ed students. I mean, honestly, outside of special ed, I'd say only the students that I'm really connected to are the ones that I coach.
Yeah.
So I've just really kind of gotten to have I guess you would say, become a big softie when it comes to some of the special education students, because you really find out stories and some of the backgrounds of where those kids come from. And you do realize with some of them, there's a rhyme and there is a reason as to why they are the way they are. So still coaching football. I actually really enjoy coaching football right now. I was almost to the point a couple years ago where I thought maybe I might get out of football versus wrestling. But then Mike Collins, I'm sure some Cherokee people might know who that is. He was at Cherokee in 03, 04. And then he left to go to Pebblebrook to get into head coaching. And then, so he's the head coach at River Ridge right now. And then Coach Durst, Greg Durst, he was at Cherokee for a little bit. Left after my freshman year, went to a head coaching job at Lassiter. I actually get to coach offensive line with Coach Durst. Coach Collins is the head coach. Gary Roach, who was actually my middle school coach and a lot of people's middle school coaches if they play football for Cherokee. He's one of our community coaches. And then Gary's nephew, Kevin Roach, he played at Cherokee. He's there helping us coach. So it's a really good group of guys. Very fortunate to be around people that I grew up with, looked up to, and actually, Coach Collins and Coach Durst were two of the people as to why I wanted to get into coaching. And so I've always considered it one of my career goals is that I always wanted is to maybe be able to coach with guys that coach me, and I was very fortunate to do that. I got to coach with Coach Manus for 7 years. So I've always been very fortunate to actually get to coach beside men that coached me when I was an athlete. So I really enjoy doing what I do. I guess that's what you would say you would find on Wikipedia. It's a 33-year resident of Cherokee County.
And it's, that's the cool thing about whenever sixth grade that you came in from Buffington, that's where we met as well, just to be able to have that connection. And my mother's a teacher, so I kind of knew growing up that eventually at some point that was probably going to be what I fell into because it's what I knew, what I was comfortable with. So you said it was around middle school, high school area that you figure, okay, teaching may be something I'm going to want to do. And why do you teach? It's always a tough question. But what about it is for you?
I always felt like teachers played a critical role in helping me develop as a person. I've always kind of had the aspect of, or the point of view that if you are willing, you will learn something new every day. And I had a lot of teachers that helped me develop. And a lot of times, they make that connection, they establish that relationship with kids that maybe don't have something outside of that 7:45 to, for them, 8:15 to 3:15. So I've just always felt like I feel like I'm a better person today because of teachers that helped me through school and coaches and even band directors like Miss Mullins, Mr. Norton, Mr. Carter. I mean, I felt like they played a big role in my middle school years. I just felt like if I could get into it and maybe help somebody find a purpose, make their day, make them smile, then that's what I wanted to do.
And that's the right intentions right there entirely for any teacher right there. If that's what you are waking up every morning to do, you're in the right place. You're in the right spot for it.
Schedule's not bad either.
No, you definitely can't complain with that, being able to come in, having those break time periods for Thanksgiving, having those for during the summer breaks and winter break to be able to do the holidays. Yeah, you can't beat it. But you don't have the same breaks as really the rest of us because you're coaching all the time. Like you're always out there with the kids working. Now, being a teacher and being a sports coach, y'all get a lot of sometimes bad rep, unfortunately, which is not right at all because y'all put in really tons of work between the two. Like y'all are constantly building more hours, in my opinion, than we are as in the classroom because you're going straight from classroom, less than an hour after school, you're out there in the gym, then you're getting ready to be out in the field. You're there Friday nights and you're late there Friday night and you bring them back. And it may be half the year. Then you did 3 sports for a while. Once that one season ends, you're going to the next season. Once that season ends, you may be overlapping with another one, but you're continually going. What are some misconceptions that people have about coaches that you want to kind of fill in and correct?
I will say probably one of the first thing is a lot of people view coaches as not very smart. Maybe they're just the PE teachers of the building, but honestly, you only have about 6 or 7 PE teachers, and not all of them are football coaches. I mean, most of them are coaches, but they coach different sports: baseball, softball, swimming, volleyball. I've actually met some really intelligent people that are coaches. Also, some people might assume that just because somebody coaches a sport, they have an extensive background in that sport. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of times in education, depending on the school systems, one of the things I will say right off the bat is Cherokee County is very fortunate with their athletic programs and finding people that do care for them, because one of the things, you don't see it so much in football, but wrestling being more of a northern sport, not necessarily has established programs at some schools. One of the things I've especially seen with wrestling is you get a warm body. Mm-hmm. And they're just trying to do the best they can, and not every school puts that as a priority. And it's sad for the kids. Like this year, I went to a tournament for wrestling, and I won't say the school, or the school system, but they obviously didn't have a wrestling coach, and they had to just find somebody to do it.
Yeah.
So the teacher's there, it was a female, and she was told by the athletic director that you just show up, I'll take care of everything else, I'll handle all the paperwork, I'll do all this. Well, they show up to the first tournament of the season. These kids get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, make weight, and they don't have a weigh-in sheet. They're not in track wrestling.
Oh my
They can't
gosh.
even do any of this stuff. So these kids can't wrestle. And a lot of times is you just have to find people in some situations that I would guess the biggest is like there are people that end up coaching sports that they may not know about because it's the best fit for the school at the time due to teaching allotments. I mean, based off this number of students, you only have so many teaching spots, and you might have to find somebody that's never played a sport, never coached a sport, and just have to say, hey, we'll send you to any clinic, anything that you need to do, but we need you to be there to do it, which is fine and dandy. There are a lot of people that are willing to learn. You got to find people that you can trust to be there. So one of them, I'd say another thing is as a coach, and especially as a head coach, you have to make what you feel like is the best decision for the program. As a parent, you have every right to worry about your individual kid, that's your kid, that's your responsibility. And sometimes the decision you make to help 30, 35 kids doesn't settle with one person.
That's hard.
And then that makes you a bad person. So you have to definitely have a very thick skin to be a coach. And one of the things is I learned at a young age is like, all right, these are my rules, these are my expectations. And then you establish these rules, these expectations with a kid that maybe doesn't have the same rules and expectations at home. They're going to break the rules.
Yep.
And
They're
so
gonna
one
push
of the
that
things
challenge.
that the longer it took me to figure out is the more rules you have, the more rules they have to break. Because not everybody has the exact same expectations. With my parents, like if you signed up for something, you're going to finish it, you're going to do what you're supposed to do, you're going to go to practice, you're going to be there.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, in
There's
discussion.
not necessarily the expectations with every kid now. And, it's not necessarily the kid's fault. I've coached some really good kids with some really bad parents, but still they're really good kids.
Yeah.
And they're really good kids. So I would just say, I guess the misconception that some people might have about coaches is that when they make a decision, they're just being a jerk. And that's not the case. I mean, you're spending more times. One of the things I've always tell my wrestlers at the beginning of the year when I coach is, look, I'm going to spend more time with you than I'm going to spend with my family.
Yes.
Every coach in this room is going to spend more time with you from October to February than they spend with their family.
That's a
you are
sacrifice.
probably going to spend more time with us between you being at school, going to practice, going home, going to bed, than you're going to spend with your family. And so just understand that every decision that is made in this room is out of respect and what we feel like is the best thing for the team. The team.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the
Everybody.
individual.
Yeah.
And so coaching, you really have to have some difficult conversations. You have to make some difficult decisions. And sometimes one of the best advices I've ever gotten, he's actually Mr. Santoro, who's the principal at Creekview right now. He was our AD for a couple of years. Is sometimes you just have to listen.
True.
Doesn't mean you have to do what they're advising you or asking or whatever. Sometimes you just have to listen because that's all they want. Sometimes they want to be heard too. And the same person, the same parent that wants you to, little Johnny was being a jackwagon at home. Maybe can you run some extra sprints or do something for you? They'll be the first one to be on a witch hunt because you made a bad decision. I've personally experienced this, and I've had kids that they don't really have a dad, and we don't want you to be so negative all the time because you're more like his father figure. And, we're not here to be fathers. I mean, you can say we're here to be a father figure, but I'm not here to father your kid. Like, there's somebody out there for that, whether it's the stepdad that's there 100% of the time. It's not me. I guess the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that coaches, when they make a difficult decision, we're not doing it to be bad people.
Yeah, because you have, as you said, 30, 40, 50 kids that you're having to look out for as a whole.
There's expectations. You have to think about everybody. Obviously, you want to be successful, try to be as successful as you can be. And so with that comes difficult decisions. And like I said, sometimes you just have to listen. Sometimes that's all they want. They just want to be heard.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, you can do everything that you feel like you've done, and somebody's still not going to agree with what you've done.
Yeah, you can't
And
please
so
everybody.
that's it. That's just that's all you can do is just try to do your best.
Now, turning within the same question, but putting it to special education, what are some misconceptions that people have about special education that you would like to clear up?
Some of the special education, I feel like it's kind of the same thing as in special education. There are difficult conversations that have to be held. I mean, a lot of times when you go into an IEP meeting, which is an individualized education plan, I always try to talk to the parents, talk to the kids and say, hey, look, like you're going to hear some things that you're not going to like, but it's not just constant bad things. Anytime I could put a compliment into the meeting,
Yes,
I would try to point out something good, because a lot of times it is a lot of, well, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this, and because they can't do this, we're going to try this. And so a lot of times it is a lot of negatives, and sometimes the kids, especially in high school, when they're encouraged to be at the IEP meeting.
yes,
I mean, they don't have to be at the IEP meetings up until high school, and then high school we want them there, and then they have to sit there and personally hear all this stuff of what their teacher said, what I can't do, what their parents can't do. And sometimes you just kind of get the feeling that you're just getting ganged up on by your parents, your teachers, and whoever's in the meeting. So I always tried to point out good things when I could, say some good things about them. Sometimes I guess special education teachers, especially in the team teaching aspect, maybe get viewed as not doing a lot because maybe the teacher doesn't necessarily want to team teach.
that's a big challenge.
Which what the definition of team teaching is 50-50. I always kind of viewed the aspect of is I would tell them is like, this is your classroom. I know it's your classroom. I know I'm coming into your classroom. You let me know what you want. And some teachers, what they want is different than other teachers, what they want. I've been with teachers that if you'll literally just handle the paperwork, that's all I want. Nothing else. I don't want you to come up here and teach or put in 2 cents. So special ed, there's a lot. I mean, necessarily, even though that person might not be up actively teaching, there is a lot of work that goes into special ed, a lot of paperwork, a lot of things that you have to deal with. So,
Can you help us?
even though it might seem like somebody's not doing something in the special ed aspect, it doesn't mean that they might not. I mean, they might be sitting in the back of that classroom working on an IEP.
That's true. There's a lot of
it might seem
paperwork.
like they're not doing something, but they're doing something.
Yeah. Like, and speaking of that, like there's the paperwork and stuff that goes on. You have like IPs, 504s, you've got BIPs, you've got RTIs. Can you give us a little bit of insight of how long does it take you to write an IEP? What do you have to do to be able to have like a BIP in place for a student?
Okay, so for IEPs, to start that process is at the beginning of the year. You always sit down and introduce yourself to the kids and the parents. You have to send out the goals and accommodations to their teachers because they have current goals from the previous IEP that they need to be keeping that on. The teachers need to be doing, because that's how you decide. Are we going to continue with the same goal, or are we going to implement new ones? So there's always that beginning of the year process. And then when you get ready to have a meeting in advance, at the beginning of the year, you sit down with your special ed facilitator, and this is when the end date of the IEP is. And so you always try to have it at least no later than 2 weeks before, because I mean, a parent can't get off work, something happens, like you have to reschedule an IEP. The last thing you want for an IEP to expire before you have a meeting. So rule of thumb is we always might, if a kid's IEP expires July 8th, we might have that meeting June 7th. I mean, just to, if something happens, we have a month to work with.
And also you have so many people that have to be at that IEP meeting as well, besides just you and that parent or guardian.
Yep.
So it's a lot of coordinating.
And so you send out a notification of the meeting, kind of send out and talk to the parents and, hey, this is when the meeting's scheduled. Does this day work? Yes, no, reschedule it, whatever. And in that process, you send out what we call a current functioning report to the teachers. This is the academic strengths, academic weaknesses, behavior strengths, behavior weaknesses. And this is kind of what you make the IEP. This is the bread and butter of the IEP. You have your present level of performance. This is usually at the beginning of the IEP, strengths, weaknesses, medical concerns, anything like that. We have to have the IEP completed about 20 days before the meeting, because then the special ed facilitator, they go in, They review it. All right, looks good. Send it home. You send home the draft. Tell the parents we have a draft letter. Hey, this is just the draft. This is what we're talking about at the meeting. You will get the final IEP at the meeting. At the meeting, you go over the progress report, which is the previous goals, transition plan, which is 8th grade through senior year.
Yes.
And then at the meeting, you're supposed to have a regular ed teacher, hopefully somebody that knows the student. You don't want to just pull somebody in, but I mean, sometimes it happens,
yep.
but you have to have a regular ed teacher. Any service provider, they're at the meeting, and then you just sit down and you go through it.
Yeah, and sometimes they could be an hour, sometimes they can be days. Depends upon what's needed at that point in time for that student.
Depends on how active the parents are.
Yeah, and it's double-edged sword. Sometimes it's great to have that extra involvement. Sometimes it can be detrimental to that student as well. There's always
I've had
both
kids
sides.
that the parent never came. So then you would go through the IEP with the kid and they'd sign it.
Yeah, and that's rough seeing that. It's hard.
It's hard.
Now, jumping backwards back into coaching again, is you mentioned that you see the kids more than their families are going to see them. What does like a day, week, or a year in the life of a coach, like on and off the field, kind of look like? 'Cause you're in the locker rooms, you're at practices, you're at meets, you're in the weight rooms. What does that look like for you as a coach?
I would say the biggest difference between now and when I was in school is it's almost like everything's year round, because everybody has that expectation that no matter what sport you do, even band, drama, something's always going on in a high school. I will say that. Like, you have to check the calendar because something's always going on. And so basically, I mean, you don't get a lot of time off. I know always with football and wrestling, you got summer workouts. So during the summer, like, I would go to a football workout in the morning, and then I would come back in the afternoon for a wrestling workout just to give myself some time, maybe go to the pool, spend time with my family, and then go back to the school and do the wrestling workout. So a lot of the times during the summer, like I said, I'd go to a football workout, go home for a couple hours, and then come back home or go back to the school for a wrestling workout in the afternoon. Football, there's a couple camps we go to that are all day things. Like if we go to the Georgia 7-on-7, I'll leave the school at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'll get home at 6 o'clock in the afternoon during the summer.
Man.
And then some camps and stuff. GHSA, we do have 2 dead weeks now, which usually when we were in post planning, like Memorial Day week, that's a dead week. And then the week of the 4th is a dead week, which nobody can do anything, which is good because it gives the coaches time to spend time with their family and the kids to spend time with their family, because I'm sure without dead weeks, there are coaches that are extremely dedicated to what they do. They probably wouldn't take time off if there wasn't somebody saying you have to take this week off. Then you go into school, and a lot of times, depending if you're watching film or something in the morning, you might get to school at 7:15 in the morning. Go from there, go to a morning duty, which I've had bus duty. I just go sit out in the bus lane, go to your first period class, go through your school day, then go to an afternoon practice, 5:30, 5:45. And then by the time kids leave, you might not leave school. One of the things that's hard sometimes, it's like, I always try to tell my wife, is like, yeah, practice is over at 5:30, but the last kid might not leave until 5:50. So just because practice is over at 5:30, I might not leave the school until 6 or later.
Yeah.
So you're talking in coaching, in which any sport, like I said, even with band directors and stuff, because they practice and everything too, you're talking about the average coach, band director, drama teacher who's having play practices. Anybody doing extracurricular activity, you're talking somebody might get at school from 7:45 and they might not leave until 6 or later.
Yeah.
So a lot of 11, 12-hour days. And then football, you have Thursday night, which is JV freshman games. And so you're talking Thursday, you get to school 7 a.m. for morning practice, leave at 8:30, 9 o'clock that night, roll back in Friday morning, get there at 7:30, 7:45, and then you have a Friday night game, and you're not leaving until 11, 11:30. Saturday, you break down film, grade film from Friday night, huddle, the program coaches and sports use to exchange film. So there's no more driving and exchanging DVDs like when we were in school in the early 2000s. Technology has definitely made it easier. So Saturday, you watch film, grade film from Friday night, and then you're breaking down film. who you're playing the next week. And then Sundays, it's usually when we go and watch film, there are coaches that will just go ahead and turn around and do it on Saturday morning. It's really up to your head coach on what you want to do for film. I've always done Sundays, and I've been with coaches that want to sit there on Sunday for 7-8 hours, and I've coached with coaches that want you to watch film every day after practice. And so
Wow.
going back to that aspect, in my first 2-3 years coaching, I'd get there at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning. I wouldn't leave till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, because they would want to watch film after practice, because his son was playing middle school football. He had to be there anyways.
Yeah.
So why not just go ahead and sit there and watch film? Really, I really like Collins, because the whole thing with Huddle is like you have the ability to sit there and watch film at home,
Wherever you're at,
in
wherever
the
you need.
classroom. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, he's not going to sit there and keep you away from your family too much. But like I said, I've been with coaches want to come in there and have 7-8 hours on a Sunday. I've been there for 4 to 5 hours on a Sunday. Then I've been there where, okay, this team does something similar to what we've just seen the week before. It might only be 3 or 4 hours. Typically in football, you're talking anywhere from 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And then wrestling, which football and wrestling, they overlap. So pretty much what I would do, at least for the last 10 years, is you're talking from the last week in July when the first helmet practice starts until February break, nonstop.
Man, wow.
Practicing during September break, practicing during Thanksgiving break, practicing during winter break. It's nonstop football practices, and then there for about 3 or 4 weeks, depending, or even later, depending how long your football season goes. Like I know 2020, the pandemic, that was actually ended up being our best football season. We went 11-0, made it to the Elite Eight. And because GHSA pushed the season back 2 weeks because of COVID, from the beginning of November up until winter break, I was actually coaching football and wrestling.
Oh,
So
wow.
for almost
Because
a good month and a half, I'm trying to handle 2 sports. So October, November is usually pretty busy if you're a football and a wrestling coach, because it overlaps. Wrestling, it's a little bit different from football. If you want to get those kids mat time, that's also a fundraiser for wrestling programs, is to host tournaments.
Yeah.
So you base your schedule, like you have Wednesday or Thursday night matches, and then you have tournaments on the weekends. And so you pay to go to tournaments. People pay to go to your tournament if you host. So wrestling, you're practicing every day pretty much, 3:30, 5:30. You got kids, you got to make weight.
Yep.
You wrestle whatever weight class you can wrestle. But if you commit to the weight class, then you better make weight. That's always been my rule. Like, I'm not going to make you cut weight, but if you say you're going to wrestle this weight class, then you better make weight, because your team's depending on you. And if you don't, then you're sitting out the next week. But wrestling, you might have a Wednesday night match, Thursday night match, which is either just a duel between you and another team, or a try, which is you and 2 other teams, which is 3 matches or 2 matches. And then Saturday, you go to a tournament. And so at my busiest in November, if football's still going on, I've go through football practice, gone to a Wednesday night match, and then gone to a Friday night game, and then turned around and had to be back at the school at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to a wrestling tournament, and be at a wrestling tournament until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's definitely very busy. And another thing is, I guess you could say the misconception about coaches, we do not do it for the money. You get a
small
supplement.
stipend. Yeah.
And it's funny, like the thing is like, working for Coach Collins now is when I was 15, 16 years old, Coach Collins would be having a bad practice or something, and he would sit there and say, I'm out here for 8 cents an hour. I'm out here away from my family for 8 cents an hour, and this is what y'all give me. And I'm like, 8 cents an hour? As a 15-year-old kid, you're like, there's no way. No way you're out here for 8 cents an hour. Well, then
now they're in
fast
another
forward,
shoe.
10 years, and you get into teaching and coaching, and let's say used to they spread it out over your 12 months, and that $2,500 supplement, and you split it monthly, and then you add in summer workouts, you add in practices, you add in film, tournaments, games, Sunday meetings, whatever. You're like, holy crap, it's more than 8 cents. It broke down to about maybe 25 cents an hour, but like he kind of had a point.
And then taxes hit it.
Like he kind of had a point. Like it never made sense until I got into coaching and I figured it out. It's like, all right, I'm taking 60, 70 hours away from my family a week. And you definitely do it because you love it. You don't do it because of the money. You do it because of the connections you can make with kids to help kids. Coaches do spend a lot of time away from their family. So like I said, going back to that misconception, I promise you, that's another reason I say they're not making decisions to be a jerk, to be a bad person, because they're definitely wouldn't be doing what they were doing if they didn't care about your kid or the other. Like right now we have like 100 kids at football. So like if Mike Collins makes a decision, it's not because he dislikes you, but there's 99 other kids that he has to think about.
Yeah,
so
it's true. Now there is different roles that are within the coaching world. You're assistant coach in football, and for a while you were the head coach in wrestling. What's the difference in roles between a head coach and an assistant coach?
Assistant coach for football is great. I don't have to talk to parents. I don't have to worry about paperwork. I don't have to worry about budgeting. I just show up. Coach Collins sends a schedule. He sends a text. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And that's that. So, I mean, I love it. Like pretty much in football right now, all I have to do is what he tells me to, which is I coach offensive line with Coach Durst. Every coach has responsibilities, like he delegates responsibilities. So typically for me in football, my responsibilities are either go with JV or freshman on Thursday. I've called plays for JV or freshman if he wants me to. Friday night, I have my CDL, so I drive a bus to away games. I might help load certain equipment into the trailer. He kind of delegates, all right, you load this, you load that, to try to make sure everything doesn't get forgot about. And coach offensive line, grade film for the offensive line. He might ask me to sit in the freshman locker room, we have 2 locker rooms. So I might have freshman locker room duty, drive the bus, help load the trailer. I'm usually up in the press box on a Friday night. And then on Friday night, I'm usually charting the plays that are called, looking for what I need to look for. That's it. And then head coach, it's a lot. Like it is a lot. And I guess basically just being thrown into it at such a young age in first year, it's just now it's like, whatever. But there are times when you feel like you're barely floating. Head coach, you got to budget, you got to worry about money, equipment, like, hey, we need this, we need to do that. Fundraisers, what are we going to do as a fundraiser? Having a parent meeting, scheduling workouts, scheduling practices, scheduling matches and tournaments. Are you going to go to a camp? What are you going to do during the summer? When are you going to start your off-season workouts at school? What are you going to do? Developing, designing workouts, designing practice plans, checking paperwork, making sure. Number one thing I would suggest any head coach, obviously, is to make sure a kid has a physical.
Yes.
They have to have that before they can do anything else. They have to have physical, and they have to have insurance. They don't have insurance through a parent or a guardian, then there's a company called TW Lord that you can buy insurance for like $75 a year through the school. But they have to have a physical, and they have to have insurance. That's it.
Yeah, protect yourself and protect that student.
You got to make sure kids' physicals are up to date. You got to make sure they're registered. You got to take attendance, make sure kids are coming to practice. Kids not coming to practice, hey, where are you at? Talk to the parents. You got to talk to parents as the head coach, making sure the equipment and everything runs smoothly. Budgeting, junior programs, you got to worry. You got to make sure that you have a feeder program, because if you don't have a feeder program, then you're not going to have a lot of kids at high school. It's a lot of paperwork and communication and worrying about budgeting. I would guess I'd say the difference between a head coach and an assistant coach is just basically the paperwork and the talking with the parents, having booster club meetings, things like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're still planning for your classroom when you're in there as well.
Oh yeah,
so.
and you do all this, and you still have to make sure you're able to do 7:45 to 3:45.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a lot on anyone's plate. You mentioned a lot with having to deal with parents, having to deal with the student. I'm going to write some notes on this one because I'm always looking for extra tips here of what strategies do you use to help dealing with players' discipline issues? Because that's something that's massive. And that's going to vary between each.
Like I said earlier, one of the things I've learned from the get-go is the more rules you have, the more rules you have to worry about them breaking. For me in wrestling, the biggest thing was just like, look, if you're not here, I can't depend on you to make weight. I can't let you wrestle off for a varsity spot. And I've had kids that made varsity spots and they've missed a tournament. And I'm like, well, if you missed a tournament, you've let your team down, so you get to sit out the next one. If you miss weight, you let the team down, you get to sit out the next one. I guess it just depends on like the situations, because every now and then you do come across some kids that do have a really bad home life. And then you also find yourself sitting in that situation as coaches having a conversation behind closed door. It's like, yes, Johnny comes from a home that has a mom, a dad, consistent jobs, da-da-da-da-da. And he misses practice, whatever. But then Jim's coming from a home that has a guardian, mom or dad not in the picture, has a bad home life. But if he misses practice, are you going to hold Johnny and Jim to the same standard? It's like one of the things I found myself is you try to be more lenient with kids that have that bad situation. And then a lot of the times, like with those kids, you just find yourselves having that conversation behind closed doors and saying, look, like, this is where you're at. This is what you're doing. Even though you have a difficult situation, you're given some leniency and you're taking advantage of it. And so you just kind of have to find yourself, like, where do you draw the line and say, all right, come back, maybe try it again next year. Like I had that deal with a kid like that this year. Great kid, has an extreme amount of potential. And it just got to the point where I said, look, man, I was like, this is like strike 5. And, I don't want to, but I have to at some point. Like, it's still, everybody knows your situation. It's not like it's a surprise.
Each circumstance, as you said, is different. And then you have to be able to make that judgment call. And that's hard as a coach and as a parent, too, to be able to, and you got to be able to.
You got to make that judgment call. And are you going to hold this kid to the same standard as the rest of them? So it's hard.
Then the next comes the academic portion, because, again, they're in practice with you for 2 or 3 hours after school. They're having the events here.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing a head coach is doing, is checking grades.
Yep.
So, I mean, you got to make sure they're obviously passing their classes.
I know some schools do, some schools don't. Do y'all have to, like, hey, we have from 3 o'clock till, say, 4 o'clock is study hour? Or, hey, that, we have, sometimes we get some tutors that come in to kind of help out. Do y'all have, is that something that's offered at, I know they do it at colleges. Do they do that at high schools?
Basically, the way that works is almost every teacher at River Ridge High School offers tutoring in some way, shape, or form. They may break it down by department. It might not necessarily be going to tutoring with your teacher per se, but you would be going to tutoring with somebody in that department. And so a lot of the times, some teachers offer tutoring from 7:45 to 8:15. So it is encouraged that you go to tutoring during that time. So, or during your lunch, get a hall pass from your teacher. There are a lot of opportunities to get tutoring before practice, not during practice. You will have kids that, I can't. I just have to go during practice. Well, no, you don't. You're making the choice to go because you didn't get here at 7:45.
Yeah.
You didn't go to tutoring at 7:45. You wanted to sit in the cafeteria and talk to your friends instead of going to your teacher during lunch. So now you're choosing to miss practice because you didn't do what you're supposed to do.
And that's the accountability portion.
So that's the accountability portion. So
it's a lot. You're able to keep up with all those different things here. Now, what do you recommend to parents to help their athlete off the field during an off season, or if they're struggling at a position, just, hey, maybe next year, what can you be able information to offer that parent of the student athlete?
I would just say be involved, be up to date. There are so many forms of communication now. I mean, emails, social media platforms, Remind 101, GroupMe, TeamSnap, whatever app you try to use for your team. There's so many forms of communication. And one of the things I heard every year as a head coach, we just didn't know what was going on. Okay, so you didn't get the email, you didn't get the tweet, you didn't get the Facebook post, you didn't get the GroupMe, I don't know what else to do. So a lot of the things I would say is just make sure that you stay up to date. There are plenty of ways that coaches try to communicate with parents. It's not just an old-fashioned email, check your email. I mean, there are multiple platforms that coaches and teams use nowadays to try to get communication across. And I would say is just be up to date and pay attention. Because a lot of the times is, your kid's not going to come home and tell you everything. How was school? Oh, it was great.
Yeah, it's
What'd
fine.
you do at
Okay.
school? What'd you do at school today? Nothing.
Yep.
Did they really do nothing at school for 8 hours? Come on. I mean, it's communication. So I would say is just make sure that you're following whatever platform, check your email, whatever it is that you need to do to stay up to date, write the calendar down, know when they need to be there.
That definitely
That's
does
the thing is when
go a
they
long
need
way.
to be there, they need to be there. And I've always told kids, and the breaks are great. Like, don't get me wrong, the breaks are great, but at the same time, is like I've always told the kids, and I was like, I get at the end of the day, you're going to do what your parents tell you need to do, but if you want to be successful at something, you might not need to take that ski trip, that beach trip.
That commitment.
I mean, you got to
time
ask
is there.
yourself, like at the end of the day, what's your goal? Like, what is your goal? Is it or do you want to be a starter? Do you want to be as good as you can be? Or are you okay with just being a part of something, making it a hobby, doing whatever? I mean, I guess it would just say is like, where does your kid see themselves? Where do they want to be? What do they want to do? And try to go from there. I told kids, I said, I get it. It's hard. Like, your parents, they want to go on a ski trip because they want to go on a ski trip. I get it. Like, that stinks because you're missing like 2 weeks worth of practice. But at the same time, in February, if you don't make it to state, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
It's hard. And so I would just say, like, if you're a parent, there are plenty of times that you can go on trips and do things if you base your schedule around the breaks. Just find out what your kid wants. What's their goal? What do they see? Are they trying to be a starter? Are they trying to keep their starting spot? What are they doing? I mean, even during football season, during September break, we give them days. Like, every Cherokee County school has a bye week during September break.
Yes.
And so, hey, play a game on Friday, go to the beach Saturday. But hey, you just need to make sure you're there for the Thursday evening practice. Like, you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We don't practice till 5 o'clock on Thursday. Like, even if you're leaving Thursday morning, like, you have time to still go be a family, still go be there.
Yeah.
For those 2 or 3 practices that we're asking you to be there for. And so, like, even then, like, in wrestling, it's the same way. Like, I'm not practicing Thanksgiving morning. I'm not practicing Christmas morning. Like, I'm giving you 4 or 5 days with your family, but the 3 or 4 days that I'm asking you to be there, like, you need to be there.
Yeah, because you're taking your time as well. A lot of students, a lot of kids are starting to find the podcast here and there. Do you have anything that you want to say to your current or former student/athlete players? It's always good to give them an opportunity if they found us here and say, hey, I know you're there. This is what I want you to know.
One of the things I've always tried to tell kids that I'm coaching, obviously, even professional athletes, your day of playing is going to come to an end. The physical demand of a sport takes its toll on your body. So you're not going to play sports forever.
Yeah.
And so if you really like sports, then like me, try to find your way into a coaching role. If you don't want to be a teacher, go coach a little league team. I mean, there's being official. There's a lot of ways that you can still stay involved in a game. One of the things I've always said is, if I don't teach you anything about sports, I'm going to try to teach you a life lesson. And part of that's showing up every day, being on time. And one of the things I've always told the wrestlers is, like, I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from your mom.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not going to be at practice, I want you to text me, or I want you to send me a message on GroupMe, and I want you to tell me you're not going to be at practice.
Be an advocate.
And I want you to tell me why. That was another thing is, like, I was like, well, I'm not going to be there. Why? They feel like just not telling you it's okay. And it's like, no, like, I want to know why you're not going to be here. What's more important? What's going on? Like, I've always tried to be understanding. Like, why aren't you going to be here?
That's true.
And so the biggest thing is like, they need to understand is like the accountability and the communication. Like, this is a job. You need to be here. You need to be on time, and you'll find good things. And I was like, anything else, academics, sports, I said, the work you put into it is what you're going to get. Nobody owes you anything. You're not supposed to be given anything. I said, oh, well, you should have gotten, no, you shouldn't have. You got exactly what you earned.
Yep.
Like, you earn everything you get. You earn your grade, you earn your starting spot, you earn a win, you earn a loss because you worked harder than the person that you're going against. I was like, a lot of times we have this misconception, in my opinion, that, oh, I should have known. Well, did you earn it? Like, you earn everything you get. So,
Yep.
and that's not always things I try to tell the kids is like, no matter what we do in school, because things change all the time, it's like, as far as I know, colleges aren't changing, jobs aren't changing. You can still fail a college class. You can still get fired from a job. And so I always just try to tell the kids is like, look, I want to try to prepare you for what comes after high school. And I always like hearing from former kids, seeing what they're doing with their lives. Like, now I'm to the point where the kids I coached my first year, they're grown, they're married, and they have kids.
That's true.
Like,
yeah. We're now at that age.
I had a kid that wrestled for me my first year, and his son was in the junior program for wrestling.
Oh, man.
So I always like seeing how everybody being successful, like, and seeing how everybody's doing.
Now, we've talked a lot of wide discussion, a lot of things here. Is there anything that we did not discuss or anything of words of wisdom that you just want to say today? This is a different platform for you.
I mean, no, it's pretty much everything. And it's like, I told all the kids, is like, you got to be dependable. You reap what you sow. You know, it's a lot of work. Sports are very demanding. It's year round pretty much. And whether you're going through the normal season at school, a lot of people try to specialize in things. So when they're not in season, they go to some kind of training facility. And I mean, it's you got to work. Like, it's hard. It's hard work. It all depends on also, like, what I always try to tell the kids is, what's your goal? Is it just to be a high school athlete? Like, are you done after your senior year? Or are you trying to be a college athlete? And part of that's you'll find in your why. Like, why are you wanting to do this? You can't be successful at something if you don't know why you do it.
That's true.
So,
that's why at the beginning I asked that question, why do you teach? Because that's a
if you don't know your why, then it's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of miserable days.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, thank you for spending your time coming out here with us today. You've given us a lot of good nuggets of information. I hope parents, students, other teachers, just in general, a person in life, hear this and gain some new insights here, because that's a very important thing as we continue to learn from each other. And being able to peek open that door, really, for me as well, being a teacher, was amazing. Because I didn't know a lot of those things. I had heard things or had seen things, but hearing it from, as they say, the horse's mouth makes a big difference there. So thank you, Joe, for giving us your time. Especially, this is one of your off weeks, and you scheduled up to come out here to be able to sit with me this morning for an hour and a half to sit back and talk. So much appreciation, Joe.
Thank you for having me.
If you would like to reach out, I do have multiple ways for you able to do so. I have both Twitter and Facebook. Look under Learning from Friends and Learning from Friends podcast. There is a website you can be able to go to, learningfromfriends.com. I have an email that can be able to reach out, which is cade, which is spelled CADE, at learningfromfriends.com. If you would really like to, you can contribute to my Patreon page, which can be searched under Learning from Friends. I don't have any levels or special things to be able to contribute. I teach, I do the podcast. I am a one-man band to be able to do all the editing and everything. So just $1 or $2 a month would be deeply appreciated. And as we all know, before we leave out of every episode, I always like to give the same sign-off of, my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide from Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.